In this video, we're going to talk about how to create a trifold brochure for marketing purposes, but we're also going to talk about why marketers still use the trifold brochure in an environment today where so much information is digitally delivered. A trifold brochure is a really powerful tool simply because it can be mailed in a standard number 10 envelope. It's also a really easy to read handheld document, which means your client can take this paper with you wherever they go if they wish to. You can also compress 6 pages of data onto one sheet. This all makes this document very cost-effective in the way of print advertising. This makes it a great way to deliver information to a potential customer who might not know to go to your website or who may not know about you yet. The trifold or tri-panel brochure is actually a bit of a misnomer because it's a trifold isn't really true. It's actually only folded twice. So it's actually truer to say that it's a tri-panel brochure. And here there are actually 2 types of trifold brochures. The very first one is called the accordion fold, or sometimes called the Z fold. So in that particular case, you can see here that I've got a document that's been folded into a sort of like a letter Z. So it's folded in an accordion style. The next document is called a barrel fold, and that's where you have a page that's folded into a C formation, where the outside flaps of a page are folded forward, one on top of the other. This creates the same kind of fold that you would have in a business document if it were to be folded and then placed into a business envelope. For this particular client, you're going to be building a barrel fold tri-panel brochure. If you can imagine taking that document, once it's folded into 3 sections, you actually end up having 6 pages of data. The outside of the document is your cover. The back page, of course, is where you're going to have all your contact information. And then you've got 4 additional pages of data. Now, if you were to imagine taking that particular document and then figuring out how the sequencing of the pages works, you'll realize that it's actually a bit of a complicated sequencing. And when you're building your document, it's really important to understand that sequencing. So let's revisit that. Take a standard piece of paper and fold it in 3 with the outsides towards the center. Then I want you to open it as if you were reading the document. Take a pen and place the numbers of the pages on those individual flaps. This is what you're going to see when you're actually building your document. Here I have the first 3 pages and then the back 3 pages. So I have a single document that's printed on both sides. It's duplexed. If you take a look at the sequencing then, the front page, which is actually here, is your page 1. Page 2 follows on the left inside flap. And then if you can imagine, once you've opened the left inside flap, pages 3, pages 4, and pages 5 aren't necessarily in the kind of sequence where you might expect them to be. Finally, the back flap, which is actually here, is your page 6. So building a document in InDesign where all of these pages are in place really can be a little bit confusing. So let's do that portion together. I've already opened InDesign and I want to go ahead and create a new document. So I'm going to click File, New, Document. Now I can see my new document behind my new document dialog box because I have this preview checked right here in the bottom left of my screen. You can do the same if you don't see it. Just click on the check mark within the preview panel. Right up here, the first thing I want to do is I want to look at my intentions. My intentions here are to print, and I have 2 other options. I have web and digital publishing. So I want to make sure my intent is to print. Number of pages here, I want to change that from 1 to 2. And over here, I want to deselect facing pages. The reason why I want to deselect facing pages is because I'm not going to be printing more than 1 page. I'm just going to have 1 duplexed document. So I don't need facing pages selected because it's not going to be a multi-page document. And here I want to start at page 1. I want my page size to be letter format. So if you don't already have letters selected, and that's going to be in an 8.5 by 11 document. Now you can see here that my orientation is set to portrait. So if I hover over top, I can see that it's set to portrait. But what I actually want to do is I want to change that to a landscape layout. So I'm going to go ahead and click on landscape. This is particularly important because if you don't have it set to landscape, when you go ahead and divide your pages into columns, it's going to divide the pages into really long, narrow columns, which you don't want. So over here I want to now move on to number of columns. Here I want to change this from 1 to 3. And now I want to set up my gutter so that it's between 0.25 and 0.50 wide. So go ahead and change that. Now you'll notice that my parameters are set to inches. If you don't have yours set up to inches and it's in picas, you can go ahead and change that in preferences. Now, you can go anywhere from 0.50 to 0.25, and this is entirely preferential. So your client has given you some flexibility about the size of your gutter. So if you take a look here between the panels, this is what 0.5 looks like, and this is what 0.25 looks like. So depending on how much space you want between your gutter, you can play around with that, and that's entirely aesthetic. Now you can take a look at your margins. Your client has requested margins to be 0.25. And then over here, I have this link, which means when I set up 0.25, because it's linked, watch what happens when I hover. It says make all settings the same. So my bottom, left, and right margins were automatically populated to 0.25. Down here in bleed and slug, if you don't have this area expanded, you can just click on the triangle next to bleed and slug and it will expand this area. And the client has specifically requested a bleed of 0.25. Now again, I have this link here, and as soon as I click on tab, it's going to populate all of those to 0.25. Now I can see in my preview panel, because I have preview selected, that I have a document that's divided into 3 panels. It's horizontal or landscape setup. I can see that I have a gutter of 0.25 inches between, as well as a bleed all the way around my document. This means that I can print all the way up to the extended edge, and then the printer will then trim off this excess, which means I can have a full bleed. I can have color that goes right up to the edge of my page. All right, so now I have a document that's been divided into 3, and if I scroll down, you'll notice that I have immediately beneath that, because I didn't select facing pages, my other side of the page. So I have the other 3 columns. Now one really nice thing about this is if I control minus, or for those of you on a Mac, you can do command minus, you'll notice that I can see the pages one on top of the other. One thing that I find that I need to do when I first begin creating a trifold document is I kind of need to create these little guides for me. I need to really see, before I even begin, where my pages are. So very first thing I want to do is set up my page sequencing. The first thing I'm going to do is go over here to my type tool, and I'm going to bump this up a bit, and I'm going to create little text boxes, little type boxes here, where I'm going to type in the page number. I'm going to go in later and delete these, but for now I'd like to be able to remember that this is page 1, this is page 6, because this is the front flap and this is the back cover, and then over here this is page 3. If I scroll down to the next set of pages, I can then set up this one, which is actually page 2, this one, which is page 4, and this one, which is page 5. Now it doesn't matter how neatly you do this, because quite frankly you're going to be deleting this after. But when you need to know where your sequencing of content goes from page 1 to then page 2, this makes your life all that much easier. In the next video we're going to talk about how you can place the file document from Word into InDesign.